everything going on. So that's really the relationship model coming through. Really just going forward, Ray and I, we just love to network within IT, get to know. I'm not technical, so every conversation I have is always a learning opportunity for me. So always feel free to reach out to myself or Ray. Our contact information is there. Shoot us an email. We'd love to connect with you. And then any questions, or if you just want to talk, we're here for you.
So this is Prav again. So, in Unity, the main scripting language is C#. So I know there'll be a lot of interest for the C# positions for our user group.
Yeah, awesome. Like if anyone is interested in just hearing about what we have, shoot Ray and I an email with your resume, and we can kind of set up a call, qualify more what you're looking for, and then send you any opportunities from that point, and then in the future that you might be interested in hearing about.
Great, thanks.
Okay. So on that point, we have in the BocaJS meetup in the comments, we have Reina's phone number, address, email address, but definitely use the chat below. So just below here where my finger is, just at the very bottom, you'll be able to click on chat, and you can actually make a message directly to me if you want me to, ask Todd something and you don't feel like asking, or you can reach out to Sarah and Reina with that. Now, thank you very much. So thank you if you came from the FLA.net group. Thank you if you came from BocaJS. Thank you if you came from the Unity group. Thank you if you came from BocaJS. But we're here for one speaker and one speaker at all, which is the amazing, more important than anything, Todd. And he's going to talk a little bit about what he's doing and what I think it's going to be great. I really appreciate, Sarah and Reina, that you came to me. I think that normally, this time nowadays, there's a lot of people looking for jobs. So I think definitely is the time to go forward. And if you do want to see some great opportunities in the future, there's also not only C#, which it's paid for my house and everything around me all my life, but there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for gaming and other options that Todd can talk a little bit better than I can. Todd, you can take it away.
All right. Let me share my screen here.
Okay.
Can you guys see that?
We can.
All right. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, I currently work at my photo, but I'm transitioning away from my photo. I'm starting a code school. Our first physical location is going to be in Boca Raton, and we're launching the end of this summer. Still on task to do that. And so Pravi mentioned that I gave a part 1 of this course. Don't get scared away if you weren't there for part 1. It's not a prerequisite for this. I'm gearing this talk to everyone, and but if you want to learn, I'm going to be just covering a few things today. If you really want to learn more, I'm going to be offering full game development courses, as well as other, software development and other courses through the school. First, I just wanted to thank some of our organizers. This was the only photo of Damien I could find online, and Pravi.
That was when I was younger.
Yeah, this was before you had all the gray. And
so it seems like he's about to do something to the elf below him.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That's from a Renaissance fair, by the way, at Quiet Waters.
So just real quick, what I'm going to go through today, this talk. It's not really a talk. It's going to be more like as Pravi called it, more like a cooking show, a how-to, where I'm going to walk you right through everything. But I'm breaking it into 3 parts. I'm going to start in Unity with a pre-built environment, and I'll talk about why that is. Then I'm going to bring over some game assets into that environment and kind of customize that a little bit. And then in the third part is when we get into some coding, and a lot of the Unity tutorials that you can find online, and there's tons of really good Unity tutorials online. But a lot of the Unity tutorials online, they show you, they take an object and they attach scripts to that object, and those scripts interact with that object and that object alone. And it's actually really easy to do that. And I'm going to show you a little bit of that. But really what I think is the more challenging, the code that we're going to write is going to be very simple. So even if you've never written code before, you should be able to understand everything we do. But what I'm doing a little differently here is I'm going to actually put like a score in the top right. Your player is going to have a script on that will interact with that score, and then the enemy will actually trigger the player to increase the score, which will show up in the UI. So it's attaching those actions and connecting those actions that I think is the most challenging, and I'm going to show you how to make it a little bit easier, hopefully. So that's kind of what I'm going through today. And so let's just jump right in. And so I tried to downsample my resolution so that you guys can hopefully read what's on the screen a little better. If anybody has, if anything is tough to see, please call me out on it, or you're not sure what I'm doing. But I'm not going to go through the whole Unity interface. I'm assuming you
know where that voice is coming
have either
from,
seen Unity or you can kind of follow along. But this is your initial scene when you first start Unity, and you can look around. You've usually got a camera and a directional light, and that's it. And so building up a scene, building up a game from this can be very daunting. And that's why I'm a huge fan of the Unity Asset Store, which you can access online, which is where I use it the most, but you can also get to it right here from within Unity. And they have just a massive amount of really good quality assets. I highly recommend it. Tons of free assets. Today, what I'm going to be using, the assets aren't free, the ones that I'm going to be using, but that shouldn't discourage you. There's really good quality free assets as well. But I also want to point out, and I kind of pointed this out at the game developers meetup was a month or two ago, is that the amount of money that you spend on these assets is so tiny compared to if you were to have somebody, a designer design this for you, or you were to do it yourself. So these are some of my assets. One of the ones we're going to be using today is this winter environment. And, again, like if you look at the quality of this environment, it's incredible. If I were to pay a designer to make this for me, it would take hundreds and hundreds of hours, cost many, many thousands of dollars. So to drop $50 on it, or wait when it's on sale and get it for $12 or something ridiculous, I have no problem with. So the way that you import assets into Unity is you first have to download them. So you could see here, like this particular asset here is about 0.5 gigabyte, and you download it, you go through and wait for it to download, and then you can import it. And when you click import, it takes time. It has to import all the assets for your particular system that you're building for. So remember, in Unity, you can build for iOS, you can build for Android, you can build for Mac, Windows, Linux, PlayStation, Xbox, tvOS, so many different platforms. And anytime you change platforms, it has to re-import all your assets. So I went through and I did that. I imported the winter environment, which you can see down here in my assets right here. I also imported this third-person controller that's a melee combat controller that I got through Invector. Invector also has free controllers that you can use. This one's a little higher quality. It has some more features. They even have they have several. I really like this one. I've been playing with it lately. So I've imported that, and you can see it here in vector third-person controller. And I also, I'm not sure if we're going to use them. We'll see. This guy, Maximum Bergmarov, he has just incredible quality, really beautiful assets that he's created. Like these, you know, this group of fighters here, really good for a fighting game. One of them actually, here we go. This looks like just like Damien, right? And you know, $5 for 15 models, really, really incredible. So I imported that in case we want to use any of those models. So, you know, again, you just, you know, you click download, you click import, and then the assets appear here. So let's jump in. And what I want to do is I want to start, I want to first start with this winter environment. And what it has all of these, you can see down here, it has, you know, all these different textures and skyboxes and things, but I just go right into the demo scene. And I actually created a copy of this for us to use today. And the only thing that I did differently in this demo scene, oh, here we go, is let's actually pop down right into the woods here. The only thing I did differently was I did something called baking a nav mesh. So what that means is this, well, let me go through first and show you what this scene, this is the demo scene right from Angry Mesh. So it has, let's actually zoom back out. It has this terrain, right? So the terrain is basically the area that your characters would be walking around. It has these rocks here, right? It has mountains, props, and you can see these are mostly like fallen branches and so forth. It has these particles, these fog particles, which we can look down on. There's fog here, which actually, based on where I'm going to be messing around, I'm going to move this fog in closer to where our camera was right here. It has another patch of fog here. Let's move this in closer to where we're going to be playing just to make it a little more exciting. Another one here. Again, let's just move that in. And one more patch here. You know, they kind of have it blowing in off the hills, but I'm just moving it in just to make things a little more interesting for our characters. So particle effects are very useful in 3D game design. You can purchase a lot, you know, from fire to explosions, lightning, dust, leaves falling from trees. I used one game I created, I had dollar bills flying out of an ATM machine, you know, kind of Grand Theft Auto style, I guess. These are null objects that are just here just as separator lines. And then we have this reflection probe down here. Let's jump in to that. Sorry. Whoa, all over the place. Where is my reflection probe? There we go. So this right here is my reflection probe, which just helps with calculating lighting and shadows and reflections and things. I have, because I'm outdoors, we have directional light. I have a camera, and the camera, so the view that we're in now is like kind of, you know, our God's eye view, where we can look at this from any angle we want. We can go down below the ground and look up from below, right? And but the camera is the way when you play the game, when we go actually into the game, we see things through the camera. So your player always sees things through the camera. So the camera is one of the most important elements in game design, is, you know, how your camera moves through the scene and so forth. And then this particular asset has these settings that control the wind and everything, and that's denoted by this green blob here. It's just something that Angry Mesh has. That's their logo there, and it just controls some settings. So that's what's in this scene right here. And if we play the scene, and I ran some tests on this with Damien over Zoom, and he said that over Zoom, the video is very choppy. So I'm getting this beautiful scene here with gently flowing branches in the trees, and I can slowly pan and look around and see the fog blowing in and look up, and I'm getting a really nice frame rate. I don't know if you guys are seeing, you know, how it's rendering for you, but for me, it renders pretty nice considering it's just being rendered real time, you know, and inside Unity. So that's this scene. And again, you know, if we wanted to build this scene, this asset pack comes with all of these, you know, branches and rocks and all these things, the trees. I can create this myself. I can procedurally generate landscapes in Unity. If there's time at the end of the meetup, I can show how to do that some. But for me, a lot of times, especially if I'm making a prototype, I just want to jump in and have something that's already pre-built for me. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to also now let's jump into the Melee controller. So this Invector third-person controller, it comes with basic locomotion, where you're just moving around a third-person character. It comes with an item manager, so if you want to have like inventory and things like that, or just basic melee combat. I'm going to go into the demo scene there, the basic melee combat, and I'm going to show you what comes right out of the box with this one. So, oops, I'm in. Okay, well, I'll just hit play just to show you. And again, I don't know how this is going to stream online, but you can see if you can see on in the debug window here on the screen, I'm getting like 75 frames per second, not bad. I can now move around. I can move my view, so I can look around, and I can walk, I can jump, I can roll, I can do all kinds of things like open doors and punch and kick, right? So this is just right out of the box. And what I'm going to do is I don't want this environment, right? I have this beautiful winter environment that I set up. So I'm going to come over here into my hierarchy, and I'm going to grab everything but the hive here. And the hive is, you know, this this environment that I was, this environment that I was just walking around in, fighting and so forth. There's bosses and all kinds of cool stuff. I don't want that. I don't want the hive. I just want this guy, right? The guy who I was playing, right? I want him, which is this melee controller. I want some enemies to play with, right? I want this third-person camera that follows me around and that I can move around and look, right? So I'm just going to grab everything basically but the hive here, right? I'm going to copy all of these things. Now, typically this is not how you would do it. You would use your Invector menu here, and you would say, okay, create a melee controller. Then you would add, you know, the melee components to it, controls and all that stuff. I'm just, you know, for making things really quick, for doing a quick prototype, I'm just going to copy everything they have here. So I'm copying Command-C. I'm going to go back into my demo scene that we were just in. I don't want to save any changes. And I'm going to go right back to where I was, and I'm going to paste those components right in here. Okay. So now I'm going to have to move them around in the scene and tweak some things. And also one of the things, if you guys have played around in Unity, that can get really wonky is I now have two cameras. I've got the original camera right here in the middle of my scene, this camera that you're seeing a preview for right here. And I have this third person camera, which is somewhere underneath all of this terrain. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move my third person camera to this position right here, and then I'm gonna delete this one. So let's take a look though. So one way I can do that is I'm gonna go to my main camera. I'm gonna align my view to the main camera. And then I'm gonna go to my third person camera and say, align with view. And boom, now the two cameras are right in the same spot. So you can see if I switch to the main camera, it's right there in the middle. My third person camera is right there. Let's compare these though. Whoops, I didn't mean to child that. Let's compare these though. So here's my main camera. One of the things that I spoke about to the Florida developers group is something called clipping planes. So your camera, you don't want to be rendering everything in the whole world. You want only to be rendering things that are within view of your camera, because we're rendering everything in this whole scene in real time, but we only need to render what the camera can see. Well, how far out do you want to render? So this camera that was in our scene has a setting of 1500. The third person camera that we brought in has a setting of 250. Why do you think that the camera from the Hive has such a nearer clipping plane? It's only rendering things much closer. Why would that be compared to this camera? Does anybody have any ideas to why that?
Feel free to unmute yourself, guys, or someone's
press the space bar if you want to talk.
Ah, nice.
Yeah,
Someone said the walls.
Yeah, I guess you don't need to see past the walls, right?
Right.
You don't need to render anything.
When you're indoors, you don't have to see more than, say, 100 feet, 100, 200 feet. But when you're outdoors, you have to see further. So take a look at this camera preview here, right? And this is my indoor camera, right? And you notice past the trees here over the horizon, you see sky. But look, when I switch to my outdoor camera, you see that mountain appear there? Ready? I'm gonna switch. Camera 1, camera 2. Can you see right here in the preview, there's this mountain right here that's appearing. Well, if you can't see it, take my word for it. So what we want to do is we want to crank up the distance and say we want to render much further out for our outdoor camera. That's great. Now I can delete the first camera and just focus on the second camera. Couple of other changes that I want to make. My UI, let's take a look at the UI. So this is what I saw when I was playing before. This user interface. There's this logo here, which I don't need, right? So I'm going to open up the UI. I'm going to click that logo and say bye-bye. There's item collection display, like I don't need that. It's for inventory stuff. And then let's open up the HUD, and I'm going to unpack this prefab. So prefabs are ways of like efficiently creating things that you can make multiple copies of. But if you want to make a change in that just in one place, you have to unpack it and say, okay, dump all the contents out. Now let me mess with them. And what I have here is this display controls. I don't like, that's ugly. I want to get rid of that. And the debug panel that tells you how many frames per second you're doing and all that stuff. I don't want to have that on there. So now I have a simpler heads-up display that shows my health and stamina. I get this damage layer that you can see in the bottom right, which is like blood. So when I get hit, when I take damage, it puts like blood on the screen, which is really cool. And then we've got some text up here, which I'm just going to leave for now. And then finally, for right now, I want to go into the melee controller, which is my guy here, right? And let's go back out to where the camera was. So here's where the camera starts. I want to bring this guy. Well, first of all, I don't want the inventory. I'm going to get rid of, oops. See, I can't delete the inventory thing out of the prefab unless I unpack the prefab. So I'm going to unpack that prefab. I'm going to delete this inventory checklist. And now I want to move this into view. So I just said game object, move to view, and it takes that thing from wherever it was in this world and moves it right into the middle of my view here. So now I can easily use the move tool in 3 dimensions to kind of move this right onto the path here. And what I do is when I slide it down, I watch the feet and I try and get them right before they disappear under the snow, pull them up a little bit. You get problems if the character starts out with their feet under the terrain, they end up falling through. You don't want them too high up above the terrain because then they could take fall damage, you know, depending on your game physics, right? So plop that guy right there. And let me just show, for those of you who aren't familiar with Unity, I use these 3 tools up here a lot. The hand tool lets me move around, pan around in the scene. The move tool allows me to, I'm holding Alt to move around.
You're clicking on the top left, right, Todd?
The top left up here, yeah, sorry. Can you see my cursor?
I can. Can everybody else see it?
Yeah, so up here in the top left, there's the hand tool, the move tool, and the rotate tool. And I use those a lot. And the keyboard shortcut for the first 5 tools here is QWERT. You know, the first 5 letters on the keyboard, QWERT. So very convenient. So when I'm in Unity, I pretty much always have my left hand on Q, W, and E, so I can easily switch between these tools. So let's just move this guy right here. And you can see the shadow he's casting, everything. So let's just start.
So Todd, if we had to make this ourselves or modify this, is this actually like a terrain object that's on the ground, or is it something else, like just a regular mesh? Like, the reason I ask is I know, like, you know, there's a few differences, and I guess in this case it might not matter, but like the thing you mentioned about the your guy being stuck in the ground, being too low to the ground, like if it's a terrain object, like how thick should the collision be so that it doesn't, like, if it's fast moving, it doesn't like fall through the ground?
Right,
anyway.
right. Good question. So let me not answer that question exactly, but talk about different types of objects, and then I'm going to also talk about nav mesh. So right here, this object here is a plank. It's a plank of wood, and this particular object is 3-dimensional, meaning if I look at this object from any direction, I can see it, right? Whatever direction, I could look at it from underneath and I see the bottom of it, and I could look at it from above and I see the top. Let me just put that back on the ground. But the terrain and some of your other objects, so the terrain mesh, which is this one, which we can zoom out and see, it's this big panel here, right? And it's dented and it's been stamped so that it has some terrain to it. This is a 2-dimensional object, meaning it has length and width, but it has no depth. So if I go underneath this and I look up, you see how it becomes transparent. So it has no depth. The depth to this terrain is 0. So that's why I can see all of my objects through, and this is very disorienting to people when they first get into 3D, is you know, like, look at these mountains here in the bottom left. you're seeing some surfaces and not others, because those are two-dimensional objects that are only one plane, or only one surface, rather, is rendered. So this top surface that you see here is rendered. It reflects light. The bottom surface does not. The bottom surface is completely transparent. There's no reflection. There should be no light under here. So it's a really kind of disorienting thing, I think, when you first get. I mean, I've been doing this for years, and it still can be disorienting to me. But it's something to keep in mind. So in that, you know, if you think about that this character, my character here, right? He has let me swing around and look. You see how there's green boxes, these like green rectangles around his feet. Let me see these? These are what are called collision boxes. Okay, this is a collision box. Oops, let me see if I can select one. And these collision boxes are, you know, help detect when the foot has hit that plane, has hit the terrain. So I haven't done a lot of testing with this particular object, but I assume as long as part of that is up above the surface, we should be okay. But the surface, essentially, think of it as like paper thin, right? And if you break that surface, you can fall through. And we could test that, right? So let's play this through now. We have our environment. We got rid of that flying camera, and now we have our third-person camera. So now I can easily look around, right? I've got my character here. I've got the sun glinting off of his helmet, and the trees are waving in the wind. So you see the glint on his helmet is changing as the shadows change. And this guy can walk around. He can jump. He can roll, right? Do all kinds of things. Climb up onto the terrain, right? Just like in a typical video game, right? Only this looks a lot sexier than the Hive, right? So very easy to take those what Invector gave me, these, you know, these melee controllers, and drop them here into this beautiful environment. Now, in order to allow so this is my guy, right? We also brought over some enemies. Let me open this up, and I'm going to get rid of this garbage here and just have 3 enemies. And let's place these enemies around. So let's take a more bird's eye view of the terrain here. So my guy's right about here. And let's put the first enemy, let's say right here, somewhere right about here, okay? So I'm gonna take this enemy, I'm gonna say game object, move to view, and what we're gonna see now, let me drop this guy down to ground level, here, put him in the path, and what we're seeing now is that you see this bullseye here, right? This bullseye is being controlled over here. This is a script that came with the you know, Invector melee system, and it has to do with detection. So this enemy here has this VAI controller script, which has all these properties, right? So I can decide how much health he has. I can decide if his health is going to recover. But what I'm interested right now is detection. So is this guy idle, or is he going to wander, or is he going to patrol between waypoints? All of this is built in. I don't have to code this. Of course I could. Who's he going to try and detect? He's going to try and detect the player, right? And then you can affect his field of view here. right? So that's how he's able to see what angle his field of view. So you can see the yellow area changes. So if I want to give him, maybe he's wearing a helmet where he can only see very narrow field of view, or maybe he can see really well, has really good peripheral vision, and then how far can he see outward, right? And then there's things like if you try and sneak up behind him, where will he detect you? The minimum detect distance. How far will he chase you, et cetera, et cetera. So these are called gizmos, this bullseye here. So I can turn them on and off. And what I want to do real quick is rotate this guy around. Oops, that's not the right axis. Rotate this guy around so that he's looking down the path towards me, right? And let's do the same thing quickly. Let's drop another enemy really quickly right here. Move this guy. This guy obviously has his gizmos turned off, right? So detection, gizmos, you can see it is a very narrow window that this guy can see in for some reason. So let's crank that up.
So Todd, so
Sure.
a couple of people asking the same question. When you do the field of view, and I mean that's self-explanatory, but can he see past obstacles? Like, can he see behind a rock or a tree?
And so you see here, there's this. In Unity work very differently than that. What we have here is, if I click on this enemy here, you can see what layer the enemy is in right here through the inspector. So the inspector tells me this is on the enemy layer. And these layers aren't layered in physical space. The physical space is created by their position, which is here in the transform. So if I jump into this guy, whoops. If I look at this guy up close, and notice, by the way, this guy has a sword. And for those of you who are at the the Florida developers group last time, I talked about different levels of detail. So this guy actually has multiple levels of detail. So you can see from when you're rendering it from closer or further away, it has different amounts of detail. But this is on the enemy layer. So we can put things on different layers, and then we can define here the obstacle layers, what layers are going to block this person's view, this enemy's view. So what we do is we put the terrain, the mountains, the rocks, the trees, all the props on this default layer. So we just use default. We can select multiple though. So if he can't see through water, I can choose, you see how it's multi-select, right? So I could select multiple things here if I wanted to. And those are what will block the view. So let's just try this now, right? Just with these two enemies. Let's just play this through. And so here I am, and I can run up to this enemy. I don't know why he's facing backwards and not seeing me. And I can kick his butt.
Well, let's see, right? Oh my, I shouldn't have. questioned.
And what's that?
I shouldn't have questioned it.
Yeah, I'm not a gamer, but I've got these guys set to pretty easy. So this guy's got a sword, and I'm still going to kick his ass, I hope. But you can see, if you look at my health bar, I've taken damage from him. Whoops. I hope I kill him. There we go. No need to cheer. So this is and we can customize these guys. I'm gonna hold off right now. I could save this for later, but we can customize these, like put different characters here, etc. But I really want to get into the programming part, which is what I think a lot of people were excited about. So just to recap, I took actually one thing I probably just, your face just reminded me. The one change I made to this whole environment before I started was I did something called creating a navigation mesh. So if you see this blue area here, I had Unity can calculate based on the terrain and other obstacles what is walkable, right? So let me show you. I have this navigation tab open here on the right, and you can define your agents, right? So these are, I have humanoid agents. I can also add others, like if I wanted to have dogs or something walking, right? So I define the humanoid. I give them a radius, so half a foot or half a meter around, 2 meters high. That defines this blue cylinder here, and then I can define what's the how high can they step, and I crank this up. Usually, a lot of times in Unity, they have it really, really small. I like to allow these people to step higher. It gives them more area they can move around. And then what's the highest slope?
Is this like a Unity thing, or is this something from the plugin, like everything you're showing right now?
This comes right in Unity. This is built right into Unity. Okay. So all I'm saying is, that this guy can step up this high and can walk up slopes this steep, right? And then we define what areas are walkable. Usually we just say the terrain. And then we go ahead and we click bake, and it can take, depending on how complex your terrain is and what you've set, it can take a while for it to actually calculate this. So I didn't want to have you guys sit and wait. Your character, you don't need a nav mesh, what's called a nav mesh or navigation mesh. Your character, your player doesn't need this. Okay, you can define how high your character can jump and what your character can try and do. But these blue areas here are what the AI characters. So if you have a companion character, or if you have enemies or just non-player characters wandering around or patrolling, they can only walk in these blue areas. And sometimes these nav meshes, they don't make a lot of sense, right? Some of them are really odd. You get weird shapes, and so sometimes you have characters have odd behavior, but you can make smaller, tighter meshes. They just take longer to calculate. So to calculate a quick nav mesh, it ends up getting, you get these like really weird things, like you could see around here, where my character might be able to walk up this rock here, but like say I kick the character into this area here where it's not navigable, they might get stuck, right? So I know you guys have seen this in games before, where my son was playing this game called Ark, and he was fighting a dinosaur, and the dinosaur got stuck in a mountain. The dinosaur was like hanging out of the mountain, and he was just walking up, punching the dinosaur. This dinosaur normally could have killed him, but he was just like, cool, it's stuck in the mountain, and he just sat there and punched it. And these kinds of glitches happen, and when you look at these nav meshes, right, you can see why some of that might be, some of these broken pieces here where the character can get stuck. So I baked a quick one just because this is just a quick prototype. Okay, so basically just summing up, let me turn off that nav mesh. Other than baking that nav mesh, I just took this beautiful environment right off the asset store. I grabbed, this player and, our melee player character here, and a couple of enemies, and the third person camera right out of another asset, slapped them together to make a cool prototype game. But now I want to get to the third part, which is the programming, which is where I think things get really cool. The first two parts were just to show you, like, look, it's super easy to like slap things together in Unity. It doesn't take a lot. Play around, copy paste, move things around, adjust things, and see what you come up with. But it's the programming that can really set things apart. So one of the things, that if you noticed when I was playing this, there's no score, there's no goal, right? So I go and I fight this guy, and then I fight the next guy. But what's the goal? What's the story? So here's what I want to do: is I want to go into my UI, right, which we looked at earlier, which is this, right, where I have my health and stamina, the damage, the blood that shows around, and then I have this text here. I want to put in the upper right hand corner, I want to put a score. Okay, so I'm just going to duplicate this text here in the middle, Command D. I'm going to rename this score text. So you notice so much of what I do, copy and paste, right? Be the world's greatest game developer, copy and paste, right? So now I have score text, which you can't see because it's sitting right on top of fade text and it looks exactly the same. But let's come over here to the inspector, and I don't want it tied to the top center here. I want it tied to the top right. The width, I can say, let's go 160 for it. And now the position X, and I can do things like I can just grab my tool and drag it over, right? Which is fine. Or I can actually calculate, I want it 20 pixels over, and it's 160 pixels wide. The center of that's 80. So I want 20, and 80, I want minus 100, right? And I can very specifically position this, or I could just use my tools, drag it around where I want. Let's change the text here to score 000, right? And let's justify that, and let's crank the font size up like that, okay? So I'm going to save, I'm going to play, just so you can see, and now I have a score in the top right, but it's not going to change. It's just static text, right? Nothing will change it. So let's leave that, and let's go to my player. And here I'm on my player. Let's zoom in and show this guy again. On my player, I want to add a script. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this. I can go into my assets folder. I can create a new folder, call it scripts, add a script there, attach it here. I like the shortcut way. If you hit add component here, and then you go down to the bottom, new script, you give it a name. Let's call it player score, right? And this will, if you wait just 1 second, it will create a new component here called player score. Wait for it. What it's doing is it's actually writing a script, saving it, compiling it, and then attaching it. Boom, there it is. So now I have a script that I can edit. And back a couple years ago when I was doing a lot of game development, Unity was agnostic if you use JavaScript or C#. But in the last couple of years, they've moved towards C#. I've heard that you can still use JavaScript, but C# is really preferred, and they don't let you create within Unity any more JavaScript scripts. But for those of you who are used to JavaScript, I'm going to show you their JavaScript and C# come from the same, they have the same parents. C is the, is the granddaddy. So they actually look somewhat similar, so don't be afraid. And realize that this is very object-oriented, right? So I have this player object here on my screen, and I'm attaching a new class to it, okay? So let's open up this script, and for those of you who do program, you'll feel nice at home in VS Code, right? Or Visual Studio. And for those of you who have never seen C# before, let me just tell you, these first few lines here are just importing libraries that it needs to use for the rest of the script. If you're familiar with JavaScript, this would be kind of like saying, import collections from system, right? Or require Unity engine, right? So these are just default libraries that are added to our script. Sorry, I don't like orphaned curly braces. And then just like in JavaScript, we're creating a class, we're defining a class, we're attaching this class to our player, and this class is called player score, and the type of class is just a mono behavior, single behavior. And this mono behavior comes from Unity, okay? So, but notice, Unity wrote all of this for us. I didn't write a line of code here, right? This all came right from Unity, okay? And so every script that we create in Unity is actually attaching a class to an object. So in this case, we're attaching it to our player. We're attaching this new class called player score. And in this class, we're gonna do certain things, like we can define variables, right? Which we're going to do. We can define functions. We can even have other classes here, okay? There are certain functions that are pre-built for us. So you could see we got a start function, and functions can take arguments. We can pass things in here and they can return things. If the function doesn't return anything in C#, we say void. We just put void before the name of the function, and that says this function is going to run, but it's not going to return us a value. That's all that means. Start is one of the pre-built functions. You don't need this on an object. They just throw it here. In React, these are your lifecycle functions, like onComponent did mount, component will receive props, those kind of lifecycle things. And we have 5 of them in Unity, okay? There's start, which we have here, and this is called immediately before the player is rendered on the screen. So when it's about to first render your player, because that's what this is attached to, when it's about to render it on the screen for the first time, it calls start first. There's another similar one called awake that does like kind of, even if the object isn't rendered on the screen, if you have it disabled, it'll still run. There's update, which is run every frame. So now think about this. A frame on one computer could be very different than a frame on another, because it's how quickly the computer is rendering. So this update function gets run every single frame. So if you're running 100 frames a second, this function's getting called 100 frames a second. You have to be very careful what you put in here. It can get very expensive to be running that constantly, and it can slow down your frame rate if you're doing a lot of calculations here. There's another one called fixed update that runs more at a fixed timestamp. And then there's one called late update where it renders everything on the scene and then it runs it. So those are your pre-built ones. Usually we just use these two, start and update. Let's jump right in though and define some variables, okay? So first, our variables are always gonna either be public, which means they can be seen outside of this function, outside of this class, or they're gonna be private. I'm gonna create a public int called initial score, right? And I'm gonna set that initially to 0, right? I'm gonna save this now. I'm not gonna do anything else. I'm gonna jump back to Unity. And when I jump back to Unity, it's gonna compile this script and it's gonna tell me if there were any errors. Okay, there's none. There wasn't related to that. But now you can see here on the right, I have initial score 0. You guys see that? Right down here on the bottom right, initial score is 0. So because this is public, I can actually adjust this here. Now this is silly. Why would I want my initial score to be different than 0? Well, maybe we have a multiplayer game. You're playing with your kid sister, kid brother. You want to give them a 100-point lead. You can set their player has an initial score of 100. Your player has an initial score of 0, whatever. But I just was really wanting to show how a public variable you can actually edit in the inspector. But more importantly, remember, we want this score to be able to show on our screen in the top right. So we also want to create a text object, which is actually a UI element. And we're going to call this my score, right? And this will be a text object. Now, when I save this, I'm going to get an error because I haven't brought in UI components into this class. So, but I just want to show you that when I switch over to Unity, you can see here in the console, I get an error and it says the text couldn't be found. It's like, I don't know what a text is, right? So, you know, I would copy this error CS246, be like, oh my God, what's going on? I would look up in Unity in their documents and I would find, oh, I need to bring in Unity UI. And now when I switch back to Unity, it's going to recompile this script automatically and that error will go away, right? Boom, now it's gone. And now over here in my inspector, I have a text, it's looking for a text element, right? It says, well, what text element do you want your score to be? I have two ways of doing that. I could come over to my, I could come over here, I could drag it from my hierarchy, but I also have this target button. I can click this target and I could choose my score text right here from objects in my scene. So I click that and now it knows I want to refer to score text, okay? Well, what are we doing with score text? Well, when we start, before our scene is rendered, we want to say, my score is equal to, and then we can set it to some text like score plus initial score. And remember, you can see here, initial score is an integer. It will automatically convert it here to a string. C# will do that for you. It'll concatenate this. It'll turn initial score from the integer 0, the number 0, to the string 0, and put that there. So now, okay, again, this is really boring, right? It's not really doing anything exciting yet, right? But let me switch back over. Oh, duh, sorry, I did something stupid. So if we look at the score text, you see how it has all of these properties here, right? There's tons of different properties. The property I want to change is the text property right here, right? So that's what I didn't do right. I should say my score dot text is equal to that. I save, I switch back to Unity. Sorry. And now my error goes away. And when I play, the only difference you'll see is, remember how it said score 0, 0, 0, you know, it was 4 zeros? Now, before it renders, it changes it to my initial score, which is 0. So now in the top right, you could see score 0. So yes, this isn't very exciting yet, but we've now programmatically changed that text box in the top right, which I guess is this way for you guys, right? We've programmatically changed that text box now to actually give our score. Well, let's jump back, make this a little more exciting. We're going to create a private variable that is only accessible within this function. We're going to make it an integer. We're going to call it current score. Okay. And before we render, we're going to set current score equal to our initial score. And we're actually going to render this current score here. So now we have an initial score that's always 0. We have a current score now that we can tweak, all right, you know, when we kill the guys. And let's take this code here and copy it into our update function, right? So on every frame, it's taking our current score and it's drawing it up there for us, okay? Little bit expensive, but, you know, hey, for, you know, we're actually going to get rid of that eventually. And by eventually, I mean in the next minute. So now what's happening is we're, let me jump back to Unity. Again, you're not going to see anything, right? Because it's starting with a score of 0. It's setting that to our current score. Every frame, it's going to update the score with the current score, but nothing is changing that current score. So no matter what I do, my current score is 0. Well, we can screw around and we can say current score. So the plus equal is just shorthand for current score is equal to current score plus something else. So we can add 1 right here on every frame. This isn't what I want to do, but it just is for a demonstration here. Hello, Unity. Play. And now what's going to happen is my score every frame is increasing, right? So just by standing here doing whatever, my score is cranking up.
This is your social distancing score?
My social distancing score. Nice. Okay. So this is not what we want to do, right? We don't want this. What we want to do is we want, when we kill a bad guy, we want to add points, right? So I'm going to create a function here, right? Remember, we could create variables, functions, and classes inside here. I'm going to create a function. I'm going to make it a public function, meaning we can see this outside of this class. But it's not going to return anything, so it's going to be void. And we're going to call this add points. And this, we're going to pass into this an integer that we'll call points. So this is called we're passing an argument in. So we're going to call this with points. We're going to say add points 10, add points 50, whatever. And now we're going to say current score is, we're going to add to our current score points. Whoops, I meant to make that plural, points, right? And now because on every frame, we're updating the score with the current score, this will get whatever we add points here, it'll update. Well, remember I said this function, the update function, is expensive. So if we can avoid running this function every single frame, we want to. So, well, if our score is not changing every single frame, the only time our score is changing is down here. I can, right after our score changes, I can update the text. And that gets rid of this expensive update function. Bye-bye. Okay? So now my whole player score class, right, which I can get rid of these comments here. My whole player score class, all it's doing is it's getting an initial score from the player. It's finding where's that text, where on, you know, what text do you want me to put the score in? It's setting current score equal to that initial score and rendering it right when the object first appears on the screen. And then we're also creating a function, a method for this class that can get called from anywhere that says, hey, add points to this player. Now, I want to point out we're adding this player score class to our player. If we had a multiplayer game, we can add this class to all of our players, right? So if me and Prav and Damien were all playing, each one of our players would have a different instance of this. We can have a different initial score. We can have a different current score, right? And so what our enemy is going to need to do is our enemy is going to need to say, that particular player, I want to add points, right? So our enemy is going to have to point to our specific player and say, add points when I die. Does that make sense? So that's the last part of this is, let's jump back to Unity and let's look at our first enemy, right? This first guy is the wimpy guy, okay? His health is only 50. He doesn't have a sword, right? This is the wimpy one. So, but also I just want to point out that this already has a script called onDeadTrigger. This already came packaged with this enemy. And both enemy A and enemy B have this same script. But enemy B, if we jump to, enemy B has a frickin' sword and has more health points. So let's, you know, it has higher health. It's a more difficult enemy. So I wanna give myself more points for beating this second guy, right? So let's look at this onDeadTrigger script.
But I think you just set his health to 0.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. So the health.
Were you trying to cheat?
No. So it says if you start with a different value, like so you can put whatever you want here, right? But it says fill health on start. So this number doesn't matter if you fill health on start. If you want this to be less than, you know, what full health, like 95 or 9, then you have to uncheck this box. But so this can be 0. This doesn't matter because we're gonna fill it up on start.
Very good.
So, good to call me out on that. But so, by the way, sorry, I'm trying to go through this quickly because I know we're getting late and I'm almost done here. But I just want to say that I'm double clicking right here on this script to open it into VS Code. That's, you know, so if you're like, whoa, how did he suddenly get to VS Code? In the inspector on the script, I'm double clicking right here on this script and it automatically pops it open in VS Code. And now this is gonna go a lot faster because I already wrote the code and just have it commented out. So I'm gonna show you what we're doing here a little differently. Notice it's very similar thing as before, but what it's doing here at the start is it's saying, okay, get the character that this script is attached to and add a listener that says, when the character is dead, run this onDead handler. And this onDead handler is right here, okay? And so basically what we can use is this onDead handler here to assign points to our player. Now, we might want to do whatever player is closest, right? If we have a multiplayer game, we can assign the points to whichever player is closest to our enemy when it dies. But since we just have one player, just to make things super easy, we're just gonna grab the player, just the player object, and I'm gonna show you that in a second. So let's start by defining our variables here. So first, I'm creating a public integer, just like I did before. I'm calling this one points on death, right? How many points do you want to assign when the enemy dies? And I'm giving it a default value of 100. So when I go back to Unity, right, this should show up, points on death, and we can adjust that. So one player we can give a lower points, and the other player we can give a higher point. And then I'm going to need to call the player. So I need what's called a game object, and I'm calling that my player. So I'm defining this, and notice this is private. I can make it public, and I can actually physically say this is the player that I want to assign this to, but I'm just going to handle this in code. And it's very similar how in JavaScript we grab things from the document object model, the DOM. We can also grab objects right from our game. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to grab a game object called my player, right? So when we die, we don't need to get that object until the enemy actually dies. So we don't need to like store this in memory or anything like that until the player actually dies. So when the player dies, if we want, we can write to the log, the debug log. So we can uncomment that, and it will show up in our debug log, enemy dead. And then here's how we get that player object. And this is very much like in JavaScript, we could say like document dot get element by ID, right? In JavaScript, and that will get an element in on our page that has that ID. But what we're doing is we're finding a game object with the tag player. So let me jump back real quick to Unity and show you our enemy here. You can see in the inspector, the enemy, the enemy has a tag of enemy, right? And we've defined these tags. You can go to add tag, and you can create any tags you want. How do I get out of there? Let's just jump over here. But if you look at our player, it has a tag of player. So I'm going to get the object in our game that has a tag of player. That's all this says. And I'm going to call it my player. And it's defined as a game object, right? So I'm going to find the game object with the tag player, and I'm going to assign it to my player. Now, I want to not just grab that player, but I want to go down and I want to get this, jump into this particular script here, this class that I attached. Remember, I attached a player score class to my player, so I want to reference that. So I'm going to also define, remember, we created a class called player score. So I could create an instance, a private variable that's of type player score, and I'm just going to call it score class. This is just the name of my variable, right? And this references that player score class or script that I attached. And now here, the way I get that is now that I've grabbed this game object and assigned it to my player, I'm going to get the component player score from that. And then I'm going to grab that script and run add points on death, which is this, right? Now, I'm doing this in 3 steps. I'm saying get the player, get the player score component, and then run add points. I can do that just like in JavaScript. You know, I can string these things together. I could say, I could do either these 3 lines or this 1 line, right? game object, find the game object with player, get the component player score, and run add points with points on death, right? I could do this all as one line, but I think it's a little easier to follow like this. But to each his own. I think this is a little more readable. But let's see now. Let's jump back to Unity. We're almost done. 2-minute warning, and then we'll jump to questions. So, whoops. Now I have. Whoops. I'm on my player. I'm going to go to enemy A, the wimpy one. I'm going to give it 50 points on death. I'm going to go to enemy B, the stronger one, and let's say she's worth 200 points on death, right? And now let's play my game. So bear with me. Here we go. And
we're going to debug it live.
Yep. And now I'm going to run up here. I'm going to beat up this wimpy dude. Punch him right in the back. Boom. And look at my score, 50 points. See that?
We see it.
Todd, can you show the script where the enemy is taking damage and the trigger says that the enemy died? Someone had a question in the chat about that about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not monitoring the chat right now, but let me just beat this one last guy. I'm going to beat this guy. I'm going to get my 200 points from her. And then, boom, now my score is 250. Hopefully you guys can see that. Score 250 there.
We can.
And then we're done. So, yeah, I wasn't monitoring chat. I'm sorry. Thanks.
You can wrap it up, Todd. What I mean by that is finish what you're saying, and then definitely then it's a good time for questions.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna wrap up right there, and then we can, I'll just sum up by saying, what we did. We started with this beautiful environment. We dropped in some fighting characters, which we can go in afterwards and kind of customize them. I could show you like, putting a Damien-looking character that you get to kick in the face, or something like that. And I can.
Why not hug?
What's that?
Not hug. Why not hug? They get points for that. It's our game.
And then what we did was we also changed the user interface to add a score component. We added a class to the player that called player score here, that allows us to update the score and add points to the score throughout the game. And then when we had a pre-existing on dead trigger for our enemies, and we use those to actually attach to grab the player, to grab that script we wrote on the player, and to call that add points on that script, which then updates the UI. So from enemy to player to UI element, all with just a few lines of code. So hopefully this was somewhat instructive. Then I can turn it over and handle some questions from you guys.
So guys, feel free. I muted you for the presentation, but now it's a good time to unmute yourself. Bottom right-hand corner of your screen right there. You'll be able to click on it.
Yeah, and while I'm sharing my screen, what's the easy, chat? Oh, there's 58 chats. That's what that was.
So Todd,
okay.
just to summarize like some of the questions and chats, I think most of the stuff that you answered, almost everything that was like part of the game, but then they have general questions about how to do a build, how to do testing, scripts. So I think perhaps the easy way to do that is, I mean, this is great. It's a very cool demo and nice plugins, but some of the questions are even more basic. So I'm wondering maybe if you can just do like a more of a hello world type thing. Like just go from just one cube, one train, or whatever you want, one script,
Absolutely.
and then executable, like a 5-minute demo.
This would be a little bit late for most of us. I have to get going a little bit later. Would we be able to do it at a different time? Like, would you be able to answer the questions that we had with that? I'm not mean to shut you down, Praveen, but it's just like it's a little late for the hello
Well,
world.
Damien, is this some of these questions I could probably answer via maybe in YouTube in the comments?
Oh, no. I don't. Praveen has an excellent point to answer the questions, and he was doing a good wrap up of everything. Praveen, I didn't mean to shut you down. I just don't want to. It sounded like you were going to sort of start from a box, and Praveen, that is genius. I think that's definitely the sort of the level one. Although I didn't find it that difficult. Maybe it's because I don't know anything about Unity, but I know enough about C# to get more or less what's going on here. And for example, when I was trying to help out with the chats, I was getting it wrong. But Praveen, if you don't mind, it's just that I think sort of a 101 will be another half an hour or so.
Yeah, that's fun. So maybe instead of that, we can just build it and run it as an executable.
Yeah,
that'll answer half the questions right there.
Right.
Oh my.
Okay. So let's do that. Let me just show you that in Unity. I don't know. So a few people were asking about testing, and one of the things. Let me just while the console is open. When I'm playing the game, I'll be getting runtime errors here in my console. I didn't really address those right now because if you remember, I copied things over and then deleted stuff. And some of those things that I deleted were actually referenced by other objects. So when the game was playing, screen or deleted out as those I knew about. But you do want to clear those so you can actually I can address that in real time. I have no compile errors. Unity won't even let you play the game if there's any errors on compiling. But to build in Unity, you just go to File, and I always start with my build settings here, Command-Shift-B, and one of the things that always tripped me out when I first started with Unity is I'd go right in here and be like, okay, it's set for Mac OS, perfect, that's what I want, I'm on Mac OS, that's exactly what I want, and I would hit build. And there's a big problem, is the scenes in build here at the top of this window, this is empty. So
Damien, this would be a good section, like if you ever do like tech comedy, like a tech stand-up comedy for Unity stand-up joke, this would be an insider joke right here.
Oh my God, I do this, this is one of those mistakes where, almost every, you make this mistake 20 times before you remember. So I hit add open scenes, and it's adding our demo scenes copy. That's the scene that we're on. And I can go into the player settings, the specific player settings, and whoops, let me open this up a little wider, and I can actually like hone in and create an icon for it, right? I can upload icons, do what resolution I want to do. Is this going to be full screen or what? Splash image, all this stuff. What the quality and so forth, stuff for Xcode, for packaging. But one thing I should do is I should give it a company name. I'll call it Boca Code, and the product name BJS for BocaJS Winter version 0.1, no icon. Okay, and now I can say build and run, and what it should do. Oh, I need to save it. Need to save it somewhere. And what it's going to do is it's going to go through and build this out, which can take a long time. I've told a few of you, and actually, I think this predated. I think this was actually before I met Damien, when I was working on the Ally World project, and we were literally working 160 hours a week. And what would happen is when I would hit build like this, and I knew it took, I had it timed how long it took to build, and I would set an alarm and I would lie down on the couch right behind me and I'd pass out and have an alarm go off right as it was done building. And you know, those were the only hours that I slept were while this is building. So yeah, Prav, this is one of the reasons why I didn't do this. Is if you look at this, it's on like job 5 of 11 or cluster 5 of 11, and this can take hours sometimes for a scene this complex, which Damien, I think, is why Prav was saying just start with like a simple box. But this is basically it. You just, you know, it's super simple. The good news is it's really simple. I could choose any one of these platforms basically and just say build, and it will build it for that platform. The downside, the one thing that drives me nuts about Unity, and it's, you know, I don't know there's a way around this, but all of my assets that I imported, it imported them for Mac OS. So if I just click like, oh, I want to build it for iOS now, it will then re-import every asset that I have. So when I first started with Unity, I had this tendency to like bring in an asset, try it out, bring in an...
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oops.
We're not, Todd. We can hear you fine.
My watch apparently thought I was talking to it. I would bring in asset after asset after asset, trying them out, trying different things, and then I would go to like switch something, and it would re-import all of those assets. So it's an argument for kind of keeping your projects really light and removing anything that you're not using. Like just for example, I deleted the logo, the Invictor Melee logo from the UI. Well, I should have gone into the assets and removed that asset so it doesn't need to re-import it. So yeah, like Kyle just said, you know, you have WebGL, like which is an HTML5 platform. You can actually build for that. If I were to, I could switch to that. It will spend about an hour re-importing all of these assets. But then I can build it out. It will actually create an HTML page for me with the JavaScript libraries and everything. And then I can upload that and play it. A lot of, the one downside, Kyle, about that is that kind of sucks is most web browsers will not play those off of your local machine. So you go through this whole process of building it for WebGL, and then you can't just like open it up in a browser. You actually have to deploy it to a server, you know, like Firebase or Heroku or something like that, you know, upload it to a server and then point to that URL, and then you can play it in your browser. So if that...
Right. So I think like for everything else about like the cube, everything else, like if we, Damien, if we have like 5 seconds, can we introduce Thompson? We have Thompson's runs our Discord group and a lot of our other groups, and they answer questions all the time about our game design. And we're actually doing the community project right now with Magic Leap. If anyone wants to like hands-on experience in Unity, Thompson, are you there?
Well, before we do that, do we have any
sure.
other questions for Todd? And then definitely, Prav, let's hear from Thompson. Any other questions for Prav? Please unmute yourself and just ask away as if we were all sitting down here. And I handed you the mic as I normally do. Feel free to ask questions. You're welcome to ask them as well in the chat. But do interrupt me.
I saw, Kyle, you just said, is there an example of a time you would want to use the update method? Oh, I see what you're saying. Kyle's asking about, I wish I can get all this stuff off my screen.
Well, you
unfortunately,
deleted that.
really
that
hard
method.
to cancel this stuff. The update function like that we deleted here. Yeah, absolutely. For if you're Kyle, if your game is using any kind of physics, you oftentimes want to use that. Or a real simple example is like an endless runner, right? Or a driving game. You might want, you have your car moving in a direction, or your player running in a direction. Every frame your player is running, and then you're turning or jumping to avoid obstacles. That's constantly there's a million cases where you're gonna use that update function.
Any other questions, guys?
Build and run creates a local web server. Oh, I didn't know that, Nicholas. Thanks.
Go ahead.
So you mentioned like a delayed update. Could that also be used for like survival, like a food bar or a water bar, where it takes every, let's say, 2 minutes?
Absolutely. Anything that's changing over time, or that you want to happen on every frame or something like that. Yeah, there's a million examples, Angel. Good point. Love the beard. Is that always, or just for?
I dyed it red. It's much more red than in the video.
Oh my god! I mean, it looks pretty damn red.
It's fire red.
It's awesome. Love
He
it.
also dyed the back of his hair too.
Oh my.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow, blue.
Social distancing for you guys.
Yes.
Now
That
you
happens when you social distance too long.
Angel, do the top white, and you could be like red, white, and blue.
Oh,
Good one. I like that. Great presentation, by the way. I learned a lot about Unity.
Yes, Unity.
Unity. Okay.
There's others. What Unreal has another game engine that's very similar. Really good stuff.
Yeah, I've used Unreal before and their asset pack.
Yeah, very similar. And Unity has built-in asset packs. I mean, the stuff that is in, get out of my way there. The stuff that's in this Unity asset store, especially if you go to top free assets here, Unity creates a ton of really good quality assets. Like here's the standard assets. They have 2D and 3D kits. Those are by Unity Technologies, but then a lot of other people put out free assets as well. And Unity has these really cool particles like fire and explosions and lightning, and they give these free models like Kyle the space robot. Other people, lots of really good quality. A lot of the top designers, they'll have like a free asset that's like here, like this is that's Unity. They'll have like maybe a free asset pack that has some of the assets, but then you can buy like a larger version that has a wider variety,
like a trial version.
Absolutely. So like even like in Vector, the Melee engine that I was using, they have a free version right here, and the reason it's grayed out is because I've already purchased it. So you can see the ones that are grayed out, purchased. This was free, right? So I downloaded and tried that before I accidentally bought the third-person shooter, and then really bought the Melee one. I could have gotten my money back from this. They're usually really good about refunding money, the Unity store. But you can see they have, just this one company alone has a ton of different assets, some free, some, inexpensive, it varies. I've seen assets like these beautifully rendered, like New York City loft for like $599 or something, they really vary. The prices vary widely, but it's way cheaper than paying a designer. And I'll tell you, the project, you know, one of my famous projects I talk about all the time, Ally World, I waited weeks to get assets from a designer. And when they finally gave me those assets, they were not game ready. So they spent weeks building all this incredible city for me. And they gave me the city, and it was like hundreds of millions of polygons and not game ready. So, you know, this can save you a lot of time and a lot of headache, just, you know, if you can use the pre-built stuff. I really recommend it for playing around and messing around. If you want to get into game art and, you know, modeling and stuff, you know, build your own models. But if you just want to learn how to build games, you know, start with some free assets and start, you know, plugging them together like we did today. Well, thanks to all you guys for being here, and hopefully I answered most of your questions, and I'll hand it over to Thompson now.
Thanks for the presentation, Todd. It was great.
My pleasure, Martin. Thanks.
Tom, do you have a screen, or can I share one last screen before as you talk?
Oh yes, go for it.
No, go for it. So Tom, tell us more about the group and everything.
Oh yeah, so we do have a group on our Discord. If anyone wants in on that, just contact me at artist16@gmail.com, or I could just send you the link right now.
Definitely put it in the chat so everybody can see it. Guys, you can just go to the chat and get the link to Prav has put in the other groups that delve more into Unity. So definitely check it out. Thank you very, very, very much, Todd. This is fantastic. Praveen, thank you for making this happen. Thank you. Sarah and Raina are no longer with us, but here in the chat, I mean, just saying, sounds so awful. But do find out. But now, if you're interested in a free license from, oh my God, I'm blanking here, from the WebStorm people, please go to win.bocajs.org, not just win.bocajs.org. You can do it on your phone or on your laptop, whatever you want. You will get a ticket. You don't have to sign up or do anything. Just go there. And whenever we're ready, we'll go ahead and choose a winner. By the way, as we wait for that, Alan, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about your group.
Sure. First of all, all this times I've been doing this, I hope I win tonight.
Let's see.
So me, Kyle, and Donald, we form a group called Grammar Hub, and it's on meetup.com/grammar from programmer, Grammar Hub. And what we're doing right now, we're doing hands-on learning programming. Right now, we have a whole section on React that we started, and anybody welcome to join us. We're doing, from 101, and this Monday and next Monday, we're going to be working on APIs and React. So if you're interested in learning more languages and just up your skills from where you are right now, feel free to join us. I'll put the link on here in the chat for everybody to see.
Perfect.
I'm gonna win.
Go ahead.
Oh, let me win tonight.
Let's see. There's only one way to win is to play, and like apparently everybody believes us immigrants do. You should vote and vote often. So go ahead and put your number in there. You should see your number up here on the screen, and of course on your phone. And is there anybody else? Go ahead and type on chat or on voice. That will be a lot easier for me. And let me know if you're still trying to get your number in there. And I'm going to choose someone in just a second.
Sorry, I didn't see. How can we
Win
find? Oh, you
the
just
website. Yeah, right there. This website right here.
No, sorry, I was looking for Alan's meetup group.
My apologies. The chat. Go look for the chat.
Yeah, I saw it.
Right in the chat, yeah.
Perfect. Care more about learning and making your future better than winning a license? I see how it is.
I already get a ticket.
I see how it is. All right, so let's go ahead and choose Alan as the number one guy here. I'm going to go ahead and press the winner button here that you guys will not see. Boom. Does anybody see a 9 on their phone?
No. I can
Thanks,
never
Alan.
I
You
can
should-
win.
see a 9 there.
Perfect, perfect. No 9, no 9.
If I reverse my phone,
9
Yes,
left.
yes,
9
but
left.
it won't turn color. That's the trick about it. I remember one time. So this is the version of the website. You can see at the very top, slightly different what you guys are going, which is win.bocajs.org. I added a directory, and that's the main one that goes up here on the main projector screen. And there was one person that was like winning, and they were like, "No, but I won too." And I was like, "What?" And it was like they had copied the URL at the very top. So hopefully you've copied on this URL, win.bocajs.org with no slash afterwards. I know somebody won. Go ahead and click on the chat. And for next time, this is also how it works. And in the chat, you should be able to, where it says to, click on Damien. That's my name. And then type in, give me your email address. What I'll do is
Hey,
I'll email
Damien.
you the license. Yes.
Esteban said he won, but he's a designer, so he's wondering if you could run it again.
Absolutely, yes. Let's see if Alan wins this time. Can you guys okay? So it's definitely we got an okay from Alan. Yes, we do. Thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. I'm going to press it one more time and let's see where we get another winner. Here's another winner. It's number 7. Is that you, Alan?
No, it's definitely not me.
Alan.
I think it's
Yay!
Bree.
It's
Perfect.
me.
Perfect.
I don't even know what I'm winning. I'm kidding.
I don't know. Thompson, you sent me your email. Had you win? Did you win? Is that the one, the number?
Oh no! I had. I just heard
that. So, Nicole, was it you? Okay, perfect. So go ahead and send me a private message. So click on the 2 to the right, and then you can choose my name, Damien Montero. You can choose either one of the Damiens. I just realized there's 2 Damiens. Well, choose one of them. I'll find out which one you've chosen. If you have already, let me know.
What are you talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry. Under the chat, you should be able to move your mouse. See how I'm moving my mouse over here? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So go ahead and send. Yeah, yes. Nicholas sent me the email address. I think everybody's getting them. So whoever won, whoever has the number 7, I'm going to trust you, and go ahead and send me an email and say you had number 7. Or you can simply go to Damien@BocaJS.org. Let me see if I get that.
I'm sending you the email right now.
Right.
I think it was Bree that won. Damien.
Perfect. It definitely is Bree, and I got it. Bree, thank you very much. I will send you right now the email address within the next couple of minutes.
And Bree wins for the best background also.
No question about it.
Yes.
Absolutely. This is fantastic, Bree. I love it, by the way. It is great.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, guys. You're welcome to stay. I will go, and I will send you, Bree, right now my email address with the instructions on how to go there. It's going to look like a license. In other words, you're going to say, "Oh, I just put the license. I just download the software and put the license." Don't follow the instructions. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Everybody does that, makes a mistake. That's why I keep on telling people to do that. Guys, thank you so much for coming here. Thank you, Prav, for helping with this group. Thank you, everybody that's helped with this group. And thank you guys for sticking around. There's, I was going to say there's 52
Damien,
of you.
so what do you actually do for that? I won the pass, and I have to actually download it.
Oh, Donata.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Thompson. What you do is you have to follow the link. And in there, it'll say, go to this website, give us this number, and then all of a sudden, with your account, then they will ask you which software do you want. So Bree, simply go. I'm going to forward you the information right now.
Right, but when you do that, right, it says it's not valid for that package. It's only like certain packages, or?
Well, no. Like I said, it feels like it's a license.
Right.
So it feels like you want to copy and paste the URL over, but don't. In the PDF, and Bree can help us more about that right now. So I've just emailed you, Bree. What you will see, just let me know if you have not, or let me know if you got it. What you do is you follow the instructions, and you create an account on JetBrains. You put that code, and then from that code, they ask you which software do you want. And when you click on the software, they then give you a serial number to that software.
Hey, Damien, I think that Thompson was going to make a quick announcement.
Yes, Thompson, please.
Thompson.
Well, or what's the plan to? But if before you go, how about clicking on that link I sent for our Discord? It'll be a pleasure working together.
Can't hear you, Damien.
Thank you, Ellen. Scroll up on the chat. It's around 8:29. There was a link, the Discord link.
Thompson, why don't you send it again?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Thompson, you were trying to get me to click on it now, like so everybody can see what they're doing?
So I have opened up the email.
Yes. You should see an attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see so follow the instructions in the attachment. Do you see them on the bottom?
Yes.
And it says go to the
there
website,
and
put
it'll
the
be a
number.
pleasure working with you.
What?
Say it again, Thompson.
But yeah, see, link has been sent again. Just click on it. It'll be a pleasure working with you.
Sounds good. I've clicked on it and I've joined. Everybody else can click on it if they wish to join. I'm now in there. I even chatted. Bree, if you do have any issues,
I just put in my information.
Yeah, so you'll see that it says go to the JetBrains website, put in this code in there, and create an account. It's free, and they will send you. And then once you go in there, you should get a choice of which software you want. Once you choose which software you want, and then you will then get a serial number to that software. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
So if this was Office, you would choose say Excel, and then you would get a serial number for Excel. The PDF doesn't include a serial number for Excel. You have to, because they don't know which software you're going to choose.
So she won a license to one of their packages, but she
correct.
choose which
Oh
one.
yeah, and there's the thing. Whenever you guys want it, especially you, Praveen, and you have 3 months to take advantage of it. If it's been past 3 months, they kind of cancel it.
So I think that's the thing is I don't think it's working for every package. I mean they have everything on that site, the drop down.
Yes.
But I chose like they're all in one, for example, right? And it says it's not available for that. So I'm wondering.
That makes sense. They want you to use one software. So if you have like WebStorm or PHP Storm, then that would be it. But you'll see it's easy. You have my email if anything happens, Bree.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Todd, for your presentation. It was amazing. You've really inspired me.
Thanks, Bree. Thanks for hanging in. I'm gonna go too, guys.
All right, have a good night.
Night, everyone.
Angel, you had a question?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So for next time.
Yes.
How is it that I participate in the interaction?
In the interaction in like chatting?
No, for the WebStorm.
Oh, I'm sorry. So there was a website there. It was win.bocajs.org. And if you went there, you automatically got a ticket. You can even try it right now and you'll get a ticket right now. win.bocajs.org. Go there, you'll get ticket number 1. Let me know when you get it, Angel. Did you get there?
1 sec.
Okay.
It's loading.
Okay.
No, it says it's not. Sorry.
Well, remember it's .org, not .com.
Yeah.
So win.bocajs.org.
Boca's.
Yeah, BOCA, JS is in JavaScript.org.
Yeah, I want to volunteer Kyle to give a talk.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
good
sounds
thing he
good.
left.
I think I would love Kyle to give a talk. Perfect. So watch. Oh, wait. Oh,